What I think is happening is essentially that software is eating the world. That is the business transition that we are in, and I'll paraphrase Marc Andreessen here. And the result of that, anybody here know Porter's Five Forces? Do they still teach that in MBA school, or is that too old school for you guys? Okay, what is happening here is that software is essentially doing three things at once. It is making it easier for new entrants to come into the market, especially as the cost of software goes towards zero. It is increasing the bargaining power of buyers because their ability to search, thanks to Google and Microsoft and all the other folks out there, and the ability to showroom from their devices, their cell phones, their computers, is eroding the barriers to entry of physical location, and it's making the threat of substitute products or services easier than at any point in time. So you're getting a threefer with software, and as a result, large companies, the barriers to entry that they have erected are crumbling at the same time that their ability to react in the same way as the startups in all three of these areas are making it impossible for them to make the cultural adjustments required to survive. And that's what's creating massive disruption and the opportunity for massive profit if you take advantage of it. So the reason that software is doing this right now, and I'll go right back to Marc Andreessen, if you haven't read his essay on why software is eating the world that he published a few years ago, highly recommend that you do it. In his opinion, all the technology to actually required to transform industries through software finally works. We've finally gotten it right. We've knocked out most of the kinks. Things like the public cloud, things like the ubiquity of mobile smartphones and tablets, things like the availability of open source software have all come together to create this perfect storm of capability around software that is leading to the disruptions that we're seeing. We see this with our customers. 93% of the global business and technology decision makers that we surveyed last year in our digital business survey believe that digital technologies are going to disrupt their businesses over the next 12 months. So pretty much 9 out of 10. 15% believe they have the right people and skills to execute a digital strategy. So we've got the potential here for some arbitrage because everybody knows it's going to happen. Nobody thinks that they have the right skills set up to be able to take advantage of it. What does that create? Creates opportunity for you folks if you have those skills, if you have that understanding of the changes that are coming together, and if you can help advise them on what they should do about it and convince them of what they need to do to survive the transition. So let's talk a little bit more about why software is so important right now. It's shifting from an operational nice-to-have into a strategic asset, and we see that in industry after industry. Good example, Home Depot. They recently acquired a software company called Black Locus, which specializes on analytics, data strategy, pricing optimization, because they viewed that to critical as increasing their bottom line. Train, they make air conditioners. Doesn't sound like a real sexy software-driven industry, does it? But what they found was that if they put the right software in the hands of their sales reps that are out making calls, they gave them tablets, they gave them the ability to close the deal the first time instead of having to go back to the office, write up a quote, get the quote back to the customer, and close on the quote. They found that they could increase their close rates by over 30% in some of their distributors. That's real money. Software helps companies drive their brand, increase their brand engagement, increase their brand loyalty when it is done right. When it's done poorly, kind of the opposite happens. But the way that you did startups was you had to wait until you got your first round, which was probably at least $10 million, and then you immediately put a couple $1 million into buying software, and you put a couple $1 million into hiring a direct sales force, and then you had about half that money left, and you had about 24 months before you burned through all that capital and you had to go back for another round. That was just the way that you did software startups. So if you couldn't get an A round of $10 million, you were pretty much out of luck. Now today, how are things done? I would argue to you that innovating with software today costs about 90% less than what it used to, because you don't have to go buy $2 to $3 million worth of hardware and software anymore. You can just start running things up on Amazon's cloud. You can use open source software. You don't have to go buy a direct sales force to go sell into the enterprise. That 90% less cost of software innovation, because of the hardware, because of open source, because of technology, means that we can have 10 times as many ideas go through the VC process, go through the startup process, as we could have 10 to 15 years ago. As a result, we're seeing more good ideas come through the pipeline because we have essentially commoditized the process of software innovation. That's creating disruption at a more rapid rate. We're in a new age, the age of the customer. Software is rebalancing the power to the customer. It's eroding barriers to entry. It's increasing the ability to substitute technology into existing markets. The way that we build apps and services from a technology perspective is changing. From a process perspective, it's changing. It's getting cheaper. It's getting faster. That creates opportunities. There's a huge skill gap out there. If you can master the connection between business and technology and understand these changes, you are going to do fine. You're not going to have a problem getting a job. You're going to make a lot of money. When, by reducing the adoption risk that customers have by investing in great customer experience. That's why I have an Apple machine. I might not like the company, might not like the technology, but it's a great customer experience and the stuff just works. And then finally, don't just solve the technology problem. Make sure that you also challenge the culture of the organizations that you work at, because that's the real issue. You do all that, you'll be great. Thanks a lot.